If you are in India, and if you had paid a little attention, you would have noticed many of the Hindu practices being taken up by the church. And if you are lucky enough, you might have even come across a few mind-boggling crossovers. So what is this absurdity all about? Why would the church adopt Hindu practices and symbols? Could it be a natural evolution of the religion? Not really. It turns out to be a completely well-planned strategy. This process of adopting the local culture is what the church calls inculturation. This term also refers to the adoption of the way church teachings are presented to non-Christian cultures. So what is the big deal? They are after all adopting the Indian culture. How can it go wrong? Well, it is a bit more complex and a much more serious issue than you think it is. To understand its complexity and its consequences, we have to go back in time to its origin. If we look at the history of Christianity, it is safe to say that the religion that it is today is nothing but a product of borrowings from various traditions. When Christianity separated itself from Judaism, it took several centuries of borrowing from non-Judaic sources to create an identity of its own. We cannot ignore the striking similarities between the Gospel and the Hellenistic traditions. Pagan religions even talk about ideas as specific as the date of 25th December, the resurrection, virgin birth, and the 12 disciples. However, inculturation in its modern sense emerged much later down the line. Pope Honorius IV and later the Council of Vienna and the Council of Basel decided that the Holy Church should have an abundant number of people well versed in the languages of the non-Christians, as it would lend hand in missionary activities. Men were sent out to study the languages and culture of the non-Christians. The idea was to selectively adopt certain practices that would cater to the needs of Christianity. For instance, various elements, including the festival of Easter, Halloween, and even the Christmas tree, is said to have pagan origins. Paganism is generally the term that is used to address the non-Abrahamic religions. After the adoption of pagan traditions, churches arose in place of temples, so that worshippers could keep coming to their old place of worship and gradually get used to the Christian liturgy. One must notice that majority of the pagan religions have disappeared due to conversion. Here the church becomes the authority. Though selected traditions of the region are left undisturbed, the exclusivist idea of Christ being the ultimate is present. Worshipping other gods is considered to be an act of sin. Inculturation in this context is done to perform swift conversions of the locals by not introducing many drastic ideological changes. Latin America, almost in its entirety, has been converted in a similar fashion within an extremely short span of time.
Right.
So you see what happened is, when they were fighting the pagans in Europe, they did the same thing. When they were fighting the pagans in Africa and Latin America, they did the same thing. They would go to a village in Latin America and they would say, you're worshipping your ancestral deities. We have no problem. So you can keep worshipping those ancestral deities, and we are bringing you, food and help and all that, charity. And so let's just bring in Jesus as another deity to sit along with the other deities. And he's just part of the family. And these guys were gullible. They said, fine, why not? What's wrong? So they would bring in Jesus as another deity. Then they would raise the children of these people in their own Christian school, in the church school. And there they teach the children a little bit differently. What they teach the children is, that's for your parents. For the old generation in front of them, you can respect them. But you know what the real truth is, that those are false idols. They are false idols. So when these children grow up, and the parents are now very old, the children are running the show, the parents are old, they're told, just put up with it, but someday you just have to throw these idols away and demolish them and burn them and so on. So this is a 3-generational project to inculturate, get your foot in the door, look like you're a good guest, but then ultimately the guest job is to throw the host out.
When the Europeans began the colonization of India, various missionaries and philologists like William Jones, G.U. Pope, and Monia Williams took interest in studying Indian culture through the languages like Sanskrit and Tamil. Soon after, the Christian ashram movement began. Christian ashrams were built, mimicking Hindu traditions. Moshen and Henry Lisieux, who later adopted the name Abhishektananda, and Bede Griffiths were a well-known some among the many founders of such ashrams. These ashrams were designed with temple-like architecture. People wore saffron clothes. Hindu symbols like Om were adopted. Vedic terminologies were incorporated into their discourses. The term Satchitanand was equated to the Holy Trinity. Everything was made relatable to the local populace. Conversion became a smooth process. Fast forward to today, the absurdity of cultural appropriation has increased multiple folds.
It's a significant challenge, and one this Catholic Christian community has committed to, especially as a minority religion in India. They've looked for ways to be more relevant to the dominant Hindu culture around them. It's called Inculturation.
This is the bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of it will never die. This is the cup of immortal nectar. Whoever drinks of it will live forever.
We do a lot of experiments with regard to inculturation. How to make Christianity Indian. We come together, debate and contest, discover and explore and experiment.
The people of church perform padayatras. Churches are built in shape of gopurams. Ghee lamps are lit. Aartis are performed. Bhajans are sung instead of carols. Dvajastambhams, which are carefully built in temples in accordance with the Agama Shastras, are seen in churches. Ratha Yatra has become a part of Christianity. The incorporation of Hindu symbols and gods with Christ is a common sight to see. And laughable ideas like Christ yoga cannot be ignored. Such cultural appropriations cause a lay person to fall into a realm of deception. So why do we call it deception? First, the futility of these rituals and practices must be acknowledged. These rituals, when adopted by Christianity, become absolutely pointless. Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, as a way of life, is a product of rigorous inquiry. This culture has been in development for thousands of years, with the only goal of making sense of the universe, the reality, and the consciousness itself. This culture and the intricacies of its art, science, philosophy, and yoga are nothing but a consequence of this one goal. These practices act as tools to open up higher forms of consciousness. The idea is to rediscover the spiritual truths experientially for oneself. The self is the authority, and there is no proxy. Unlike in the Abrahamic religions, where the divine is a separate entity, and it is believed that God has already revealed the truths, and that it is accessible in the form of a book. The only thing that is expected from the practitioner is belief. It is as simple as someone claiming something to be true and is expecting you to believe it without questioning. Here everything is belief-based and nothing is experiential. So what is the need for adopting these practices if the goal is not inquiry? There lies an absolute contradiction. Here, inculturation acts as a mere bridge to conversion. When these rituals and practices are nitpicked and molded into an exclusivist belief-based religion, the practice loses its significance and its meaning. It's like pulling pieces out of a completed puzzle. The pulled out pieces have no meaning of their own. For example, if yoga, which is absolutely inclusive and deals with the divine self, becomes Christian yoga, which is exclusivist and deals with an external belief-based idea of God, it completely loses its significance. There is a process called digestion that takes place. We know that these nitpicked, molded practices are adopted by Christianity. As a result, the existing holistic and esoteric culture disappears. We can see the examples of Latin America, parts of Africa, and all the pagan religions that ended up getting digested into Christianity.
Another term I've introduced is digestion of one civilization into another. By digestion, I mean that like a tiger eats a goat, and the goat is the one who gets digested. It is not that the two merge and they're both equal. It's not like that. And I tell them that when a goat is digested, the tiger has a separate DNA, goat has a separate DNA. And the tiger cannot accept even a single cell of goat DNA inside his body. It will be toxic. So the goat has to be, as part of the digestion process, has to be broken down to the molecular level, and those molecules have to be broken into basic raw material so that it can be reassembled into tiger DNA. So the goat disappears and the tiger becomes stronger. It is not that after eating the goat, the tiger becomes mild and gentle like a goat. So they'll accommodate when a civilization is being digested. So Bharatnatyam language and grammar can be accommodated, but those stories are replaced by Christian stories over time. And yoga, the practices and techniques and things of that kind which are generic can be accommodated. And then this chakra becomes the Christ center. Now the problem from our point of view is that what is left of the goat? A pile of manure. Okay, so what is left of the Native Americans is there in museums, that this is the Native American, they did this dance, they were singing like this, they were doing that, exotic people, but not a living civilization.
The culture stays, but Christianity becomes its active authority. This happens due to the ever-expanding nature of the religion. The need to convert due to exclusivity. The concept of conversion itself is absent in the non-Abrahamic religions due to their inclusive nature of treating other religions as their equal. So there is an imbalance that is being created, where one group wants to convert or expand and the other doesn't. The latter gradually disappears and gets digested into the one that's converting due to its exclusivity. This exclusivity becomes evident if we closely observe the conflicts between religions. The Abrahamic religions promote absolute divide between the believers and the unbelievers. The unbelievers are considered to be inferior in such religions. When there is such divide, conflict between two entities is inevitable. On the other hand, conflict between Dharmic religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism is absent. The Abrahamic idea of my God being the one true God and yours being false leads to conflict. In this case, it also leads to expansionism and conversion, which in turn affects the pluralistic nature of the nation itself. So, are we against Christianity? Not at all. In fact, Christianity has had its own path of mysticism and has encouraged its own idea of spirituality. But its institutional version does not. It is the exclusivity that we are concerned about. It is the idea of conversion that we are against. A religion is meant to be a personal quest and should not be imposed on others. Individuals of this land have always had their own perception of God and their own way of perceiving the truth. There was never my perception being better than yours. Perception in this context is always of an individual. India has and will always thrive as a pluralistic yet inclusive nation, not by trying to convert everyone into one belief system.